Hello everyone, and thank you for joining today's Tuesday Talk webinar. My name is Susan Braun, and I am the Associate Director of Fielding Programs. It is a pleasure to be hosting a webinar on NUterm Academic Opportunity for Rising Sophomores. Joining me today is Jason Nolan-Durr. He is the Director for the Center for Student Involvement, Shannon Walker, she is Assistant Director for Housing Services, and Kelsey Allen, the Assistant Director for Student Financial Services. During today's talk, you are invited to type questions into the Q&A pod located on the right-hand side of your screen. Following the presentation, we will begin taking questions. Please note today's webinar will focus only on summer programming, housing, and financial support. Questions regarding NUterm courses and registrations should be directed to the student advisor. So let's begin. Shannon, thank you so much. Shannon's going to start us off today. She is the Assistant Director of Housing Services. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right, so just to go over a little bit of an agenda. So first we'll talk about the registration timeline, the summer programming, and the summer housing options. And then finally, the financial support and the Q&A for all of you to ask questions on the things that we have presented on. So just to give an overview on what is NUterm. So NUterm is the Summer 1 half semester for first-year students. It is different than the Summer 1 semester for upper-class students. So it runs concurrently with Summer 1, but it does have a different name and different programming. Students can earn up to 8 academic credits, add research or global study experience as part of this program. It can help accelerate the progress and take courses required for a major or a minor, and is a valuable pathway to customized learning experiences. For students who can pursue and study in different areas and interests outside their majors, by taking electives or to continue in their major or minor. So registration for classes opens today, February 18th. For students, classes will begin May 4th, and then the last day of final exams is June 23rd. So again, that is about halfway of a normal semester, so that is the NUterm term is a half semester. NUterm is more than just courses. There is social, sporting, and cultural events. Activities are built around topical events or issues, both in the things that are provided here in the Boston campus and the global opportunities. For global opportunities, the Global Experience Office organizes short-term study abroad programs for NUterm. The application deadline for that is March 1st. Destinations in the past have included Greece, Jordan, Hungary, Spain, Australia, France, and many more. If you have questions about the study abroad options, you can do those through the Global Experience Office. And again, if you have questions about the actual academic side of this, since we don't have someone specifically for that on this webinar, the person to ask would be the academic advisor. So now in order to talk a little bit more about what's available for opportunities here on campus, Jason's going to talk a little bit about the student side.
Good afternoon. My name is Jason Nolan-Durr, and I serve as the Director for the Center of Student Involvement. And our center works really hard over the course of the summer to make sure that students participating in NUterm are afforded opportunities to engage in what's going on in Boston, as well as get out of the city. So as you can see on the slide we provided, in the past, we have done trips to New York City that include the bus transportation to and from the city, the ticket to a Broadway play, as well as often a talk back with the cast. This year, we'll actually be taking students to see Hadestown, which was the Tony Award-winning show last year for Best Musical. And then we also do traveling in the area to do hiking and kayaking to get outside. And last year, we added in a whale watching trip. And this trip takes students out into the water surrounding Boston to see some of the wildlife that we have here. And these are all opportunities that range in additional cost between $25 to $70 and typically provide an opportunity for roughly 50 to 100 students to be involved in each of those. Beyond the excursions that we offer, we do have on-campus programming. So every Wednesday we have what's called Keeping It Cool, which is where students can gather in the quad on campus and enjoy ice cream, as well as different involvement opportunities and ways to meet other centers that are represented on campus. And our goal through all of this programming is to make sure that our students are having life outside of class. As your students are participating in what we're doing in the classroom, we want to make sure that they've got opportunities to build relationships, to build their network, and to explore all the different things that we have at Northeastern to get involved. And to speak a bit more on how the financing works for all of this, I'm going to welcome in Kelsey. I'm going to welcome in Shannon, who's going to talk about housing, and then we're going to welcome in Kelsey.
All right, so for housing, this is housing on the Boston campus for students who are here. Housing is required for students who are taking at least 2 courses on campus, so not online courses or not courses through the study abroad program. They're required to live in university housing as a continuation of their first-year experience. Applications for housing are available now. They were posted with the 2020-2021 applications in December, and they'll be accepted on a rolling basis through right up until summer, the new term session starts. But there is a priority deadline of April 3rd to apply to make sure that you can put your request in for what you would like to live in. Again, since it's a required term, there's no deposit required. Required students will waive those deposits for them. And you won't need to pay a deposit for housing for any semester until you're a rising third-year student, unless you're staying for summer too. So housing for new term is in International Village, which is semi-private suite style. Semi-private suites are like Jack and Jill rooms, so there's either 2 singles with a bathroom in between or 2 doubles with a bathroom in between. There are a very limited number of triple rooms, but they are very minimal. There's also in International Village a fitness center and a dining hall, so it's kind of a one-stop shop for campus living. It is meal plan required, so students living in that building are required to have a meal plan since the suite style options don't have kitchens. For move in and out, students who are moving from other places on campus will have what we call a move to from date. For a move to from date, the students will move depending on whether or not their building is open or closed for the summer for upperclassmen. If they're moving from a first-year residence hall, they'll move before May 3rd. So you'll have a continuous contract between the two. So you'll be able to stay, the students will be able to stay in their current space until they're moved to from date. They don't have to move out at April 24th, which is the spring move out date, but they will have a date between April 23rd and May 3rd where they'll be required to move from one space to the other. We recommend that no students make travel plans until they know that specific move date, especially for students who are currently living in buildings that are open for the summer. That specific date can be dependent on when the next student is moving into that space, so it is a hard date to change. And making travel plans before that can be complicated, so we recommend that you don't do that. Students who are currently living in International Village, there's a large portion of those students. They will be automatically assigned to their same space, and if they have a vacancy within their suite or their direct room, they'll have a date where they can pull in a friend into that space if they want to. All students will be getting more information about that process after spring break, after they finish their fall selection process. For move out, the last date to move out will be June 23rd by 7 p.m. So like I said, International Village doesn't have kitchens, so it is a building that is required to have a meal plan. Each student will automatically be assigned a 17 meals per week meal plan, but they can go down to a 12 or go up to unlimited if they want to. They can do that through their portal or through the Husky Card office. And they can do that, they can adjust what they do for that up until the first week of after the first week of classes. So now I'm going to pass it over to Kelsey so she can talk a little bit more about how to pay for these.
Hi everyone, my name is Kelsey Allen and I am the Assistant Director of Outreach here in the Financial Aid Office at Northeastern. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about the financial support for new term specifically. And just to note, your financial aid and merit scholarship is fully supported in enrollment in this new term. It is dependent on the number of credits that a student takes in that particular session. So for example, if a student is taking 8 credits, then their aid would be prorated based on half-time enrollment. There is supplemental aid available to students who might have used up all of their federal funding eligibility between the fall and the spring terms. and we'll get into that in the next slide. And then just something to point out, we do have some available resources for you right now. You can always reach out to your designated financial aid counselor who can assist with creating a financial planning worksheet to show what tuition might be with room and board and your pending financial aid, as well as our website, which has a lot of great resources and links on there for you to peruse while thinking about NUterm. Here we have a sample case study. Again, this will go into the proration for NUterm. So in the fall and the spring semesters, you can see that this student here has a Dean Scholarship, Northeastern grant funding, subsidized loan funding, work study, and unsubsidized loan funding. For the NUterm session, the scholarship is prorated to be half of what the fall and spring session might look like. So for a NUterm, it's $5,000. Similarly, the Northeastern grant, which was $7,500 for the fall and spring semesters, is prorated and cut in half for $3,750 for that term. Subsidized loan, which again, students might use all of their eligibility between the fall and spring semester, is supplemented for this NUterm session specifically, which will be replaced in the NUterm replacement award. So a student might have been eligible for $875 of their subsidized loan funding. However, it was exhausted between the fall and spring session. So for NUterm specifically, we will replace that in this NUterm specific award. Similarly, federal work study is something that students can use even though it is federal funding for NUterm. They do have to be living on campus and taking classes in Boston as part of this NUterm session, and they can earn up to $550 as part of this example in that summer session. And that would be an opportunity for them to work on campus and get money each week in a weekly paycheck. The unsubsidized loan, that is something that is not replaced during the NUterm replacement award funding, and that is because it is not a need-based award compared to the subsidized loan. Payment and financing, as always, we always encourage parents and families to make payments directly to the university using their current income and savings. You can either make a one-time payment to the university, or you can break this up into monthly installments throughout the NUterm session. If you are making an international payment, you certainly can use Flywire, which is our safe, cost-effective way to transfer money from different countries to the university, and it allows students and families to pay from any country and any bank. Like any fall or spring term, there are other supplemental loan programs available. So this might be in the form of a direct parent plus loan or a private student or private parent loan. And again, if you have any questions about the financing portion of NUterm, I strongly suggest that you reach out to our office to speak to a financial aid counselor individually. That way we can provide you with your individualized tuition and financial aid options for NUterm specifically. This slide, this is just our contact information. We sort of have rounded out our presentation in terms of the important information to get to you, and we will move over into the Q&A session. I'm going to pass it over to Susan again, but just want you to have all of this contact information if you have any questions for any of us who presented today.
Thank you. At this time, we will begin taking questions from our audience. You can type the questions into the Q&A pod, which is located on the right side of the screen. As I mentioned earlier, if you could please refrain from asking questions about academics or course selection, you would want your students or students to contact their academic advisor. So let's begin with some questions. If a student is going to take part in NUterm, when is the first payment due, Kelsey?
So, the first payment will be due. It's based on the billing due date. So typically the bills are issued at the end of April, and you should see a bill due date on that particular billing statement. They're typically due about 2 to 3 weeks after the bill has been issued.
Okay. So we have a couple housing questions. I know, Shannon, you talked about if a student is already living, let's say, in International Village, will they have to move during that time?
Sure.
Or can they stay in that same room?
Sure. So if they already live in International Village, they will be assigned to the same space again for NUterm as long as they've applied by that April 3rd deadline. And then if they have any vacancies in that space, they could pull someone in. So they will automatically be assigned to the same space if they want that.
So even if they're in a different building, they do not have to go move to another building?
So if they're in a different building, they'll be assigned to International Village. All students live in International Village. If they already live in International Village, they'll be assigned to their same space.
Okay. So if a student can't take classes during summer one, does anyone know if they could take them during summer two?
So they can live on campus for summer two if they want to. There are classes during summer two. I don't know if it would be the ones that your student needs. but they can apply for summer 2 housing is also available if they need that for their
You had
housing.
mentioned that the move-to date was, I think, April 25th to May 3rd.
Yeah.
When do you expect to provide the move-in date, the exact date for the students?
Some students will get their specific date. The ones who are in buildings that close for the summer, so our open buildings are posted on our website. So students who are living in buildings that are closing will get theirs in late March. And the students who are in buildings that are open will get theirs in mid-April once they have an assignment.
What about if a student knows that they want to live with a particular person or roommate? Is that possible for them to share a room?
Sure. They can make a roommate group on their application.
Okay. When does course registration close? I don't know if we know the exact due date. We do know it is today that it stays open, and I would imagine it would stay open at least until mid-March. So if you email parents at northeastern.edu, I'll find out the exact date for you. Back to housing again. So if a student is in summer 1 and then they decide they want to stay for summer 2, can they stay in that same room?
They would have to move to upperclassmen summer 2 housing. So International Village closes for summer 2. Some of you might remember that parents stayed there during orientations in the summer. So it does close during summer 2. So if the student is applying for summer 2, they would have another move to from date at the end of that June week, so between June 23rd and the beginning of July, where they would move to a apartment style option in the upperclassmen summer open building.
I have a question. Is the rising sophomore required to take part in NUterm? May they just take one summer class? This is something that the student should speak with their advisor. They can take classes during summer 1 or summer 2. Summer 1 is just devoted to NUterm because that's when Jason's talked about the excursions and the housing and all that, that comes into summer 1. So if a student did want to take part in summer 2 classes, they should talk to their advisor. Another housing question. So if a student doesn't take part in NUterm, but they just want to take one course, can they still live in housing during that time?
They can. So students can still sign up for NUterm housing, even if they're not taking 2 classes. They're just not required to. They could also be doing an internship in Boston and still want to live in university housing. They would still be a part of NUterm as a rising second year, even if they're not in NUterm classes.
We have a parent that's asking, we are still not fully clear on the difference between NUterm and summer 1. Is it simply the experiential element packaged around NUterm? Which I think a lot of the excursions take place only for the summer 1, so I'll let Jason speak a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so there are NUterm specific excursions and experiences, and then there are additional programs throughout the summer as part of what we call semester. So the NUterm specific pieces are just for those rising sophomore students. They're the only ones that have access to get tickets to those experiences, and they happen in that period of summer 1.
We have someone asking, will there be a similar talk on summer 2? Unfortunately, we're just doing the summer 1 right now at this time. But if you do have questions regarding summer 2, you can email parents at northeastern.edu. So we do have time for more questions. I'll wait a few moments to see if any more questions appear. So as I mentioned earlier, many of you may have questions regarding course registration. Registration begins today, and students should meet with their academic advisor to plan out their course selection. Just to recap about housing, that needs to be in?
By April 3rd is the priority deadline.
April 3rd for the housing at that time. So I'll give it a few more questions to see, a few more moments to see if we have any more questions. A financial question. How would the financial calculation be changed if the student takes less than 8 credits? So let's say they took.
Yeah, so if a student takes less than 8 credits, the tuition and the financial aid would still be prorated. It would be dependent on the number of credits that they're taking. So the reason we typically use examples as 8 credits is that's usually the standard of what students take, but it's also exactly half of the full fall or spring terms. If a student is in, let's say, 4 billable credit hours, then their tuition would be prorated based on a quarter enrollment. So their tuition would be roughly $6,500, which is a quarter of a full tuition, a full semester's worth of tuition. Similarly, their aid would then be prorated to be a quarter of what they might have been eligible for during the fall or spring. So if your student is thinking about only enrolling in 4 credits or maybe a little bit more than 4 but less than 8, I would definitely suggest reaching out to our office at the email address that's listed right now. That way we can create a financial planning worksheet to reflect those changes.
So here's a question. My son signed up for housing in December and checked summer 1. He did it with a group, but not sure if those kids in his group are doing summer 1. Can my son do a separate group of students who are doing summer 1?
Yeah, they can edit their roommate group on their application. They can make changes or make a new group or add or drop people from their group up until that April 3rd date for a priority, or even after that deadline. They might, after that deadline, it's not guaranteed to be taken into consideration, but they can edit that in the status button next to their NUterm application on their Housing Online.
What about housing offenders? Can they choose if they want to live in a single or double?
Yep, so there's a question on the application of whether or not they're interested in a single. So if they check that off, that would be something that we would look at when placing them.
Once students pay the deposit, do they get a confirmation email? How do they know that everything has been deposited?
Sure, so NUterm doesn't require a deposit, so there's no deposit needed for NUterm.
If we made a change for our housing application, would our selection number change? That
sounds like a fall question.
That's a fall question, yes.
There are no selection numbers for NUterm housing. NUterm is done based off of that preference form. Since you're all either living in a single or a double in International Village, we assign based off of roommate groups and your answers to those questions.
Okay, so we have a few more moments to see if we have any more questions. So our students notified their application has been received?
Yes.
Yes.
And every time they make a change.
Every time they make a change, they will get confirmation of that. Okay. Well, if there are any questions that we did not answer today, please keep in mind you can email parents@northeastern.edu, and I will make sure it gets into one of our representatives here today to give it to them to answer. I would like to thank you for joining us today and learning more information on NUterm. If you have any remaining questions, please feel free to email us. Shortly, you'll be asked to complete a brief survey to provide feedback on today's session, as well as share any suggested future topics. We'd like to hear from you if you would like to suggest any topics. And also note that within the next week, you'll receive an email with a recording of this webinar, and you can also find many of our past recordings for Tuesday Talks on our website at northeastern.edu/parents. Again, thank you for joining us, and we appreciate you listening to us